Welcome to Module 5 of the Documenting NEPA Categorical Exclusion course, brought to you by the Local Programs Office of the Washington State Department of Transportation. This module will discuss the topics of Section 4F of the U.S. DOT Act of 1966 and Section 6F of the Land and Water Conservation Act of 1965. You may find it helpful to follow along with the CE form, which is available on the Local Programs Environmental Services website. There are multiple modules hosted on our website, so be sure to watch them all.
Part 4, Question 7 of the NEPA CE form asks you for information about several types of resources that may be present in your project area: parks, recreation areas, wildlife refuges, historic properties, wild and scenic rivers, and scenic byways. The next few slides will focus on parts A and B of this question, as they are the most commonly encountered, namely Section 4F and Section 6F properties. Section 4F and Section 6F sound similar, and they have some overlap since they both protect parks and recreation lands, but they refer to completely different laws with different requirements. Section 4F of the DOT Act of 1966 stipulated that the Federal Highway Administration and other U.S. Department of Transportation agencies cannot approve the use of land from public parks, recreation areas, wildlife or waterfowl refuges, or historic sites unless there's no feasible and prudent alternative to the use of that land, and the action includes all possible planning to minimize harm. Section 4F is found in the United States Code in two places: Title 49, Section 1653F, and Title 23, Section 138. Federal Highways implementing regulations are found in the Code of Federal Regulations at 23 CFR 774. This is a graphic I use in much lengthier Section 4F trainings. I'm going to walk you through it to give you an idea of the ways Section 4F can be handled. Don't worry though, most local agency projects take one of the shorter routes through the Section 4F process, and Federal Highway and WashDOT will be very involved in helping you comply with the Section 4F requirements. The first step is to identify Section 4F properties. This is the step that goes on your CE form. By filling out Subpart A in Question 7, you will be documenting parks, recreation areas, wildlife and waterfowl sanctuaries, and historic sites in your project area. Parks, recreational, and refuge sites must be publicly owned, and historic sites must be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, but they do not have to be publicly owned. Okay, you've determined you have a Section 4F resource. Your first question should be, does an exception apply? Exceptions are listed in 23 CFR 774.13. Exceptions include projects that enhance the Section 4F resource, projects where the Section 4F resource is an archaeological site, certain kinds of trail projects, and projects that have temporary uses of Section 4F resources. So, you don't meet the exceptions. Now we need to figure out if you have a use of a Section 4F property. The question you need to ask is, do you acquire land from that resource and incorporate it into your transportation facility? If you do, you have a use. The most common path you will follow for a local agency project is to determine that your use is de minimis, which is Latin for trivial or minor. For parks, recreational areas, and refuges, the key to reaching a de minimis determination is to work with the official with jurisdiction over your resource and negotiate your impacts and mitigation so that the official with jurisdiction will be willing to agree with you in writing that your use of the property is de minimis. You're also required to provide the public with information about the de minimis impacts to the Section 4F resource. Most often this occurs through council meetings, commissioner meetings, or park board meetings, since they're already scheduled and open to the public. In the case of historic properties, Federal Highway will make a de minimis determination when the Section 106 process concludes that there is no adverse effect on the historic resource. The Section 106 process details are in Module 4. Please note that Federal Highway is prohibited from making a de minimis determination if there's an adverse effect on the historic resource. Federal Highway Administration must approve every de minimis determination in writing. WSDOT has developed a template form we use for this approval. Written approval from the official with jurisdiction, as well as the public meeting minutes and graphics showing the use, need to accompany the completed template form. If your use cannot be determined to be de minimis, check to see if you may qualify for a programmatic Section 4F evaluation, such as the programmatic for historic bridges. If this happens, you will need to work with WSDOT headquarters and Federal Highway, who will guide you through the process. If your use cannot be determined to be de minimis and does not fit any programmatic, you'll need to do an individual Section 4F evaluation. And if this happens, you'll need to work very closely with WSDOT headquarters and Federal Highway, who will guide you through the process. It will involve preparing a document, legal review of that document, and a 45-day review by the Department of Interior. So in summary, you will need documentation for any use of Section 4F properties in the form of a de minimis template, programmatic evaluation, or an individual Section 4F evaluation, all signed by Federal Highway. Your 4F document should be an attachment to your CE form and must be completed before your NEPA CE can be approved by WSDOT or Federal Highway. The Land and Water Conservation Fund Act of 1965 provides funds and matching grants to federal, state, and local governments for the acquisition of parklands for recreational use. Section 6F of this Act states in part that no property acquired or developed with the Act's funds shall, without the approval of the Secretary of the Interior, be converted to other than public outdoor recreation uses. Section 6F applies to all projects that impact recreational lands purchased or improved with land and water conservation funds. This funding encumbers the property in perpetuity. Section 6F applies to the property even when the originally funded improvements no longer exist. In Washington State, these funds are allocated through the State Recreation Conservation Office, or RCO. They are your best source of information about past grants. They have a website with fund recipients mapped. They will also be the office that approves your conversion, although some conversions may also require the approval of the Secretary of the Interior. The conversion is a real estate transaction that typically occurs after the NEPA process. So in your CE form, we're looking for documentation that you know whether or not you need a conversion approval, and that you have started discussions with RCO and, if applicable, with National Park Service.
Thank you for watching this module of the Documenting NEPA Categorical Exclusion course. There are other modules available on our website, so be sure to check them out.